Gardner. I'm the executive director of the Feminist Press, and we published the play Now That We're Men. So Slut was a play that Katie Cappiello wrote like 4 or 5 years ago now.
3.5.
Okay, a lot has happened. It feels like 8 years ago. 3.5 years ago with the high school girl acting troupe that she was developing. And it came out of, Katie creates feminist space, essentially, where people are empowered to tell the truth about what has happened to them, and then they create work out of it that has all of that theatrical, what's supposed to happen in theater, which is this shamanistic sort of property where you see your life or life framed in a different way so you can relate to it and kind of maybe even purge bad feelings, have catharsis. And so Slut told the story of a girl who was like sexy and popular and self-described slut, but she meant it as a compliment. And what happens after one night when she's sexually assaulted by a couple friends? What's the aftermath on her and on the community? So it was about rape culture and how it affects girls. And what came out of that, because of Katie's curiosity and really the curiosity of so many young people who came to the play and guys who came to the play, was, well, how does rape culture affect boys? And that's something actually we have even less, certainly art about, but maybe even less discussion about as feminists. And so Katie and these guys developed this work that you just saw today.
I think it was both that so the way that it was conceived is that we would meet every Sunday for a few weeks, and Katie would bring up all these, like stuff that was part of our lives that we don't always get to draw on and talk about. Stuff that was like considered more taboo, or is stuff that like is less explored even though it's really prevalent. So I mean, a lot of the main scenes revolve around, be it like porn or nudes or virginity or all these like concerns that are very prevalent in our minds but aren't as explored and talked about. And so in the like actual conception of the script, that was something where we met every day and would like either talk about ourselves, talk about people we know, talk about, like kind of just go into these experiences and draw them out to bring them to the page. And then, so that's like the first part of it. And then additionally, as like in the acting process, the whole thing is about figuring out any place you can to like bring your own experiences. So even if you're playing a character that now you disagree with or you think does the wrong things, you can't play anyone like a villain. It doesn't help to like push people away. Especially as an actor, you have to like figure out what is like every empathetic like human connection that you have to these people, so that we can really understand it rather than like not talk about it. But it was all like about trying to think internally as much as we can.
I mean, the whole play was based off of us like having these conversations and then putting these ideas that we were having up as improvisation. So I think from the get-go, these were things that were on our mind, these were things that we were thinking about, and so of course we can relate to what the characters are going through because we drew inspiration from ourselves.
So I don't know, it's just like things that even if we didn't specifically went through, there's somebody that we know that went through it. So it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was that hard to connect to the character, because there's some similarities between me and the character, and there's some similarities between the character and my friends.
In today's day and age, it's very accessible, which is an issue, and especially the stuff that's out is, like you can tell based on what we were talking about, is not something that's healthy to be watched. It's not something that's a healthy example for anyone, adult, child, teenager, and that's a big issue when the only time you're getting to talk about it, because you're not getting to talk about it with these adults, and you don't feel like you can talk about this kind of stuff with adults. The only time is when you're either watching it and watching these things that are not good examples and are not okay, or when you're talking about it with these people who you don't necessarily feel comfortable with having an open conversation about, so it's hard to find that place. I'm Jordan.
I'm Alphonso, I'm 17.
I'm Rayshawn.
I'm Fred, 16.
I'm Caleb, and I'm 18. All these like real conversations that goes on throughout high school. And definitely is, and that's definitely why I wanted to do this project, because it wasn't something that was like fake, rather than something you see on TV and in movies and TV shows and stuff. And I always feel like they don't capture the real story. Like they just try to like dramatize it and advertise it in whatever way they want to do it. And rather than actually bringing a real type of conversation that you can't actually have. And that's why when she came to us, that's why I was so eager to do it, because it was just like finally somebody's actually speaking the actual truth rather than trying to like play it than what it actually is. And when you're actually talking about what's really going on, that's when the conversation can actually happen, and when change can actually happen.
The people in the group who are, let's say, in college or below, did the way everybody talked ring true to you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think there's a big generation gap, because when I first saw it, I was like, oh goodness, that can't be real. And I brought my 11-year-old son, and he was like, I've never seen a play that was for me before. You know, and so I think there's we don't want to know as grown-ups, as adults, and parents.
Can I just touch upon the checking? Because I think that actually happens less than maybe you see in the play, actually. I think, not that we wanted to paint an ideal picture, but sort of as we were going, we were like, so many instances in which there is no checking. So like very, very early on in the process, I said to these guys, I gave them a scenario that they improv'd out, and I'm like, okay, this is great improv, so realistic. Okay, now what are you gonna do? Because your friend just raped that girl, he just now what are you gonna do? And it was like, and it wasn't because these guys are amazing. So it wasn't like we're sitting here, it was because they were just fuck it, I'm not gonna worry about it. You know what I mean? It was just that if we were being so genuinely honest, right? If we were just saying, I'm not gonna tell you the thing as a grown-up and an adult and our teacher and and yes, a friend too, whatever, it's collaborator that you want to hear, I'm going to tell you the thing that's real, which is I don't really think, especially at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, many guys would say anything. Especially in that situation where there's a group of guys, you know what I'm saying? It's rare that someone's actually going to be the person that comes forward and is that was, you raped her, and we need to deal with that now. You know what I mean? That probably wouldn't happen. But it was important for us to have that to also model in a play. It's not like Caleb's character is sort of immune from playing into all of this, playing into the language and the vibrato and the, you know what I mean? He participates in that too. But we wanted to also say that there are situations in which you can be a guy and a cool guy and a guy that has power and the guy that is sexually appealing to girls or whatever, and also be a voice of that is wrong. You know what I mean? But that was something that we had to sort of fold in because it isn't, I think, the norm.
Even what I was saying before, these conversations come from what we're seeing on TV. It's not okay, so TV, they come up with whatever they want to say, right? And then this comes from, we talk about what's going on social, television, whatever, and then these are the actual conversations that goes on about them. So it's since you're doing that, this is what we talk about, but then when we actually talk about it, we are now, it's you guys don't talk about it.
Also, in the case of Caleb's character Marcus, in the moments where he does kind of not give in, I think part of what's important about those is that they're not necessarily the kinds of things you would see on TV either, where someone is proudly standing up and
Yes.
explaining all of their points and in the most glorified way. It's just moments where he's not giving in. So even if he's doing some of the other bravado, it's more realistic that the small way that change is affected is by him not giving in to something that he just feels is kind of fundamentally wrong. And so it's not like he directly gives the most even verbose explanation about what it is. He just says I don't support that, and he doesn't share his character on when he reveals that he sexually assaulted her. And so then you see the effect of that kind of in the end of the play, where it's there's that moment. Not everyone is immediately saying what's wrong, but there's a shift, because even the very little things, which are more achievable than larger change, the very little action of just not giving in to something that you find to be wrong, really does create a kind of effect by the end of it, right?
What Fred said, it's not about going out and giving a speech to everyone, because that necessarily doesn't work either. This isn't a speech. This is putting this real stuff in front of you guys. So it's not that can always get through to people either. Is this lovely big pronouncement? But I think for sure I feel a lot more able to hold my own and handle myself in a situation where I feel what people are saying is wrong, and I feel I can pull back a little bit more. And also I feel just having people that I know come to the show and then come back to me the next day and be oh, that was really good, and then kind of get into it a little bit, in context of the show, so it still feels like it's separated enough, because it's like a big step to kind of go and talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like being in the show has made me much more knowledgeable about the subjects that the show is about. And when they come up in real life, I feel like because before, I feel like I knew what was wrong and I knew what shouldn't be done, but I didn't really know how to like put it in words, or like to actually like go deeper than, you know, that's just wrong. So I feel like after doing this play, you know, I'm much more knowledgeable about how to approach people and how to let them know that, you know, certain things you just can't do.
I think it's just as hard.
Yeah, I feel like it even worsens when you get older, especially when you don't, like, when you're younger, you don't learn that what's wrong is wrong. Like, when you get older, you just don't acknowledge it anymore because you feel like more an adult. You feel like, oh, that's his business and not my business. You know, you just don't want to be a part of it. Whereas I feel like there's much more camaraderie and a bunch of adolescents that are coming of age. You tend to listen to each other a lot more, and because, you know, you kind of want to be like the people that you're around. So I feel like it'll be easier if someone was to say something at this age rather than someone in college, because by the time they get to that age, you know, they pretty much know what they want to do already.
And the only way to really create change is to start this early on, because like as we see, it's happening on college campuses in the same and sometimes worse way, or not even worse, but the same ways. I mean, it's like the guy who, like the main presidential Republican nominee, is just as, like that, it goes all the way to the top, you know? Like there's no place where this like stops and changes if it doesn't change early on.
Add on, it's like, it's harder to change somebody when they're older rather than when they're younger, because when you're older, like you already have this type of mindset, and you're already like this type of person, rather than when you're younger. Even if you lose a friend, it's easier for you to be that friend like 5 years from now. Like say you're like in middle school, it's easier for you to be that friend's friend again in college, rather than you being like 20 years old and then you stop being their friend, and for you to be their friend when you're like in your 30s, 40s. Like that's just most likely not going to happen. And so I would say, like, I mean, for me personally, it's never really been that hard for me to like speak up to my friends. But I know with this, it's made me to be able to speak up with a more knowledgeable, rather than just saying stuff and people like, I don't get what you're saying, rather than me actually having knowledge back. You know?
Like you could obviously create lots of change when you're older. Just the age thing is not that's not the issue. Yeah, like that's not what's stopping us. It's that we're like 17 or whatever isn't the reason that this is happening.
By the time you're in high school, you're already having all of this exposure to so many things. And I think there's this, and I feel, and maybe you feel this way on this campus too, it's like it's suddenly, you know, students go to college and it's as if rape was invented at college, and the administration is supposed to solve it, but really the culture starts from, we're all living in it from the moment we're born, really, and so as kids start to become more socialized, these conversations have to happen, even though they're sort of scary to have with your little kid. I read somewhere there's never too early to talk about consent, because it's so confusing. Boys and girls are so totally confused by it, and that's totally. And I think back on my youth, I had no idea like how to articulate what I wanted, and I had no idea how to become sexual and also be safe. I just didn't know. You know, it just was very confusing.
In sex ed in schools, most people are just taught to say no, and they're not taught to have a conversation about consent or like make that kind of like a mutual thing. And I thought that was really interesting because it puts the responsibility on the person who's feeling uncomfortable in that situation, whatever it be. So it's like for them to have to advocate for themselves, which is obviously really important. You should obviously say no, but like from the get-go, if you want to get something started and want to make something about these two people who are in this situation together, like it's important to talk about having that mutual respect and not just like putting the responsibility on that one person.
You know, like we're not providing tools. So like that's also sort of one of the big challenges. Is that we're not actually giving kids what they want. So it's like I've never gone to a high school, and I've been to high schools all over the country at this point, and I've never gone to a high school and had the group of kids be like, yeah, we don't need this, we don't care. Like this means nothing. Every kid in the high school is like, yeah, we need this, I had a student in Arizona, I did this big workshop in this public high school in Phoenix, and at the end of this workshop, so many kids revealed the instances, people of all genders, their instances or their experiences with sexual assault. And at the end, in talking about really openly about rape culture, and at the end I said, you know, what can your school do for you? What do you really need? Like, what do you need? What can they do to create a healthier environment for you beyond this, beyond today, because I'm gonna leave and then the conversation is gonna be over. You know, like, what do you need? And this one kid who hadn't talked the entire time, sitting in the back row, and he like raises his hand and he stands up and he's like, would it be possible at all for us to get sex ed? And you're like, no, actually. And like, that's the answer. The sad answer for the administration at that school is that they have to look this kid in the eye and say, actually, no, we've decided that's not appropriate for you. But we have a daycare center on campus, you know what I'm saying? And the percentage of students that have suffered incest, you know what I'm saying? And the number of girls that have reported sexual assault on our campus was enough for us to bring in someone to give you a workshop that isn't really about sex, but is about sex, right? But we can't have sex ed here. No. You know what I mean? You're too young for that. So, I mean, I just went to a high school in Massachusetts recently, and what's interesting is you say to this, you know, you have 400 high school students sitting there, and you're saying to them, okay, you know, how many boys in this room know that, you know, and I asked the boys, because people put this on boys a lot, that we're not teaching boys to not rape, right? We're not teaching them that. So I asked the boys, how many of you know not to rape people? How many boys do you think raised their hands? All of them.
Yeah.
They all know they're not supposed to rape people. The challenge is they don't know what rape is. Okay? They don't know what rape is. They don't know the nuance of it, right? They don't know that the deep throat scene that you're watching, they don't know something like that, for example, is a violation. They don't know that. They don't know that that's wrong. It may not make them feel good in a minute, but they don't know they actually shouldn't be doing it, right? They don't know they shouldn't be trading nudes on their phones. Like, they don't know, and I'm not saying that's rape, but I'm saying we don't know what the lines are. And so it's really hard to hold people to certain standards when they've actually never been taught the standards. So if they don't know them in high school, there's no way they're going to know them in college. And if they're never held accountable in college, there's no way they're going to know them when they're 30 and 40 and 60. So we're just not offering tools at all.
What we don't know is the dynamics of sex. That's the hard thing to teach, not the mechanics. I think a lot of us do know how babies are made or whatever. So it's not that, it's the dynamics, the interpersonal, how we treat each other and getting through the awkwardness of learning about your sexuality and the vulnerability of that.
They advertise sex in like every possible aspect they can. It could be a Sprite commercial, and they have some girls just being sexy in whatever way she can to get you to buy Sprite. And it's like in every advertisement, that's what you see, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anything. And then it's like, okay, it's adults doing it, right? But then when you get a teenager doing it, it's like, why are you doing that? But how am I supposed to know if it's wrong if you're doing it? So it's like lead by example if you want us to not do it.
And intersectionality, for people who don't know, it's looking at power, systems of power, and how they intersect. And so looking at race, sexism.
I don't know. I don't know how to talk about this, I guess, without talking about that, right? And like even addressing it, like I don't think you have to try to address intersectionality or like incorporate it if it just, do you know what I'm saying? If you're telling the story of young people, I think authentically, it just is there. I mean, I just think you can take that last scene, for example. You know, you've got a young black man who is leading you to believe that he has maybe had sex with this girl anyway, right? Even when she said stop, because he's like annoyed by that, which is like fine. You know what I mean? He's like annoyed, like he doesn't want to, like he didn't want to stop. But at the end, he does, right? And then you've got, you know, a young white man come in at the end, and he has clearly raped this girl. Well, let's like flip the scenarios. You know what I'm saying? Like what happens, like what is gonna happen? Most likely is that kid that comes in at the end that has raped this drunk girl is most likely he gonna have resources, is he gonna have legal resources? Is he gonna have access to representation? Probably, right? And like what is happening when you don't have access to that, right? When you don't have access to resources, you don't have access to support. So that's something that we talk about a lot. And also like what is the idea that you have in your head? Right? So what is the idea that you have in your head about who is a perpetrator here? You know what I mean? And like really talking about that with audiences of thinking like, where does your brain go? When you see this group of people up here, you know, where does your brain go? Like, what do you start to think of who's going to be, what's the stereotype in your head? You know what I'm saying? And so that was a factor. And then also with just Jordan's character, so much of it was just, where is the room to find your sexuality? And I don't mean sexuality in terms of like your sexual identity, but I just mean where is there room to sort of explore what having sex is and what it means to you and who you're attracted to and who you're not attracted to and what you like and what you don't like, you know what I mean? Especially in this culture where this is the standard, right? So you're like, there isn't a lot of room, whether you're, no matter what gender you are. I don't think there's a lot of room to just like find it and be it and explore it. And I think that's really sad for all of us, actually. And so with Jordan's character, it was just this idea of this kid just having just no space and feeling suffocated and not really feeling like even his closest friends give him room to be who he is or whether that's gay or not. There's just no room to just be. He constantly has to reaffirm his masculinity in some way. Well, we have to humanize people though, because I think that's one of the myths about rape, right? A really dangerous rape myth is only bad guys rape people, or only bad people rape people. That's a very, and by saying that, by the way, what I'm saying is I'm not saying I don't think rape is a horrible, horrible thing. I do. But one of the challenges is negotiating in our heads that men and boys we like our sons, boys that we're friends with, guys that we maybe like dated in middle school, can rape people. And that's just a reality. And we have to just get over that idea in our heads that if someone was nice to me once, that means they're not capable of this. They're 100% capable of this. And so when I think about Brock Turner, Jennifer and I talked about this a lot, I'm not surprised that his high school friends or his female friends or his dad or his mom came to his defense. It makes sense to me. In the sense of just, they're humanizing him because he is human to them. They can't believe he did that. And we talk so much about what is the easier thing to believe too? If we're just being really honest, what's the easier thing in our hearts to believe about just fellow human beings? That one is a liar. And that sucks. Lying sucks. Okay, so one's an exaggerator and a liar. Okay, we have that option. Or we can believe that someone raped somebody. Someone who's captain of the soccer team and a nice guy and took our daughter to prom. What's the easier thing to believe? Just instinctually, humanly, the easier thing to believe is I think that someone is a liar. I'm not saying that's right, I'm saying that's where we go. Because it's just easier and it's more comfortable because it's really hard to accept that people rape people. So I think, really humanizing them was a really big point. I want you to like them. I want you to like them and I want you to not like what they do. That's fair, because we have to not excuse the behavior of boys that we like because we like them. Does that make sense? And we can't discredit rape. We can't say, oh, rape didn't occur because we like that person. You know what I'm saying? So it's we have to get over it, you know what I mean? And understand that people are walking contradictions. That's what makes them complex, and that's what makes this issue so hard. And I'm so glad you brought this point up, because I think it's really one of the main goals of this play. You should fall in love with them, and you should also be horrified by them.